Good evening and welcome to our board meeting of Tuesday, May the 16th, 2017. We should inform you that this meeting is being video and audio recorded. So we will begin with our opening prayer, our national anthem, and our oath of citizenship. And I would ask Trustee Manuela to lead us in prayer.
Much is happening in our world today. Let us take a moment in silence to remember the situations and the many people involved and place them in God's hands, that strength, perseverance, consolation, and resources they need be given to them in abundance. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. O Holy One, we hear and say so many words, yet yours is the word we need. Speak now and help us to listen. And if what we hear is silence, let it be quiet us. Let it disrupt us. Let it touch our need. Let it break our pride. Let it shrink our certainties. Let it enlarge our wonder. We dare to come before you, God, with our prayers, with wishes and desires for our own lives, and with the needs and wants of people around the world. We ask for a few small, faithful, saving things, to walk with you in each moment, without plotting for tomorrow, and so to really consider the birds of the air, the lilas of the field, and find treasures hidden in the round of the daily, to learn by leaning into your spirit, to be present to others without preoccupation, to engage without having to win, to disagree without being judgmental, to accept outcomes without despair, to succeed or fail without misplacing hope, to tune to the bracing hum of the stars, to fathom enough without dismissing fathomless mystery of your creation, our brothers and sisters throughout the world, and the grace and mercy and power of your embrace that holds close each small one of us, and everything together in Jesus' name. Let us pray together the words of Christ. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you to Manuela for leading us in prayer. The motions adopted in camera. We are not finished with in camera yet. We will be returning to it, but we do have the motions. The information, thank you.
So there are no motions adopted in camera, but there are information that was received. The Human Resources Activity Report, there are retirements. Greg Burns, Craig Pettypiece, and Joanne Pettypiece, retiring effective June 30th, 2017. And Christine Wing, effective August 31st, 2017. Department heads, Robert Bitterajak, Lana Borsellino, Andrew Bork, Vincent Capmo, Elizabeth Camastro, Irina Klippa, Guy Koulis, Juliana Crowell, Donald Finnan, Michelle Francis, Mark Freeman, Melissa Giardina, Amanda Gonzalez, John Hodgson, Francesca Ianni, Mark Ives, Sandra Jurinic, Joanne Lepore, Timothy McCarthy, Sandra Moretta, Barbara O'Connell, Michael Ralphs, Suzanne Sabo-Mann, Lillian Vale Arujo, and Justine Yantho, appointed as department heads effective September 1st, 2017, for a period of up to 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Tright. The agenda. Number 2, approval of the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda? No? Okay. A mover, please. Trustee Ian Tomasi, seconded by Trustee Michael. All in favour? Thank you. We welcome this evening our new student trustee for next September, Anna Maria Babel. Welcome, Anna Marie. Thank you. You're joining a fine team of student trustees. Thank you. Declarations of conflict of interest. None? All right. Presentations, 4.1, see the problem, be the solution, Superintendent Pinelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my pleasure every time at this time of year to bring forth the initiatives and the hard work of our students and many others in our school communities in dealing with bullying prevention that we've been working very hard. And every year it gets better, and we should be very proud. So this evening I present an update as to where we are, but first and foremost I have to recognize that our student trustees, Manuela, Christina, and Ingrid, continue to lead and work with our vice principals, who we have Vice Principal Bellhauer, who's here. We also have Vice Principal D'Souza and also Vice Principal Thomas, who have been working together in moving this initiative through our schools. So this evening, as we continue in our quest to eradicate bullying, we continue to work on see the problem, be the solution. And during this year, I'm very proud to report that 45 of our elementary schools and 8 of our secondary schools were involved in submitting entries. That's incredible. And on April the 4th, all participants were invited to see the problem, be the solution awards at the Jean Vanier Catholic Secondary School. All the students in attendance actually voted. We had 15 contenders that met the requirement of the competition and challenge, and the students who were present made the final decision on the favorite poster, video, and favorite song in the 3 categories. The winning entries then moved on, as we know, and we've been part of the tradition in Halton Region with our coterminous board and also Halton Regional Police to move on to the Regional Give Respect, Get Respect Gala that was held on April the 25th. And again, our winners, who are here this evening, went on to represent our board in that competition, and we're very proud. So please join me as I introduce the various categories. But before we do that, I'd like to acknowledge and recognize all of the winners here this evening. So our our first category, as you can see, but we're going to put it up on display, is our poster category. And so we want to acknowledge our poster winner, and the students that are here this evening. We have a whole group of students that have contributed to this, and it happens to be John Banyai. And if I could ask Madam Chair and our Director to please come forward. And I have the poster. And if I can have all the students, I'm going to call names. I know not everyone is here this evening, but everyone will be called. That would be probably good. So, Ronan Hickey, Sapita Tati, Evelyn Vieira, Hannah Dalhia, Janelle Barreto, Ryan McBride, and Isla Khan. And the two teachers that have been part of it. Congratulations. So at this time, we're now going to show the best original video. If I can have from Holy Trinity, Luca D'Amico, Eduardo Chavez, Ana Maria, who's our new student trustee who's been part of this, Fabiana dos Santos de Silva, Ana Saji, and Hannah Melo.
much. And on behalf of the board, congratulations to everyone, and also to the parents, and thank you for bringing your children here tonight. And congratulations also goes to the schools, Jean Vanier, Holy Trinity and Holy Family, to the school administration and the staff. Tremendous work as always. Thank you so much. You are most welcome to stay for the rest of the board meeting. We should be here till after 10. Sometimes it's entertaining, sometimes it isn't, but it's very important work that we do. So we'll give you a few minutes if you do wish to leave, and then we'll begin the meeting. Thank you. All right, we're moving on. We're on for item 6, approval of the minutes. 6.1, minutes of the May 2nd, 2017 regular board meeting. May I have a mover, please? Thank you. Seconded by Trustee Michael. Any questions to the minutes? None? All in favor? Thank you.
Chair, I'm going to abstain because I wasn't here for that meeting.
And we missed you, Anthony.
Yes, I'm sure.
That's okay.
It must have gone fast.
That's okay. Thank you. 7.1, summary of outstanding items from the previous minutes. I just think it was a policy that was mentioned, if I recall correctly, but that's fine. So we're going into action items. 8.1, notice of motion on grandfather transportation. We have 2 notice of motions, as you can see from your package. And just to remind trustees of the process, Trustee Marai will be speaking for 5 minutes to his motion, and he will introduce the motion. And then, trustees, we will go around the table, and you may speak to the same motion for a total of 3 minutes. You may speak once for a total of 3 minutes, to get all your brainwaves together here. And then Trustee Marai will have another 3 minutes to close the discussion, and then we'll proceed from there. All right? Any questions to that process? Okay. Trustee Marai.
Do you need a seconder first, Madam Chair?
I do, don't I? Thank you. Trustee Michael. All in favour? Oh, we don't have to go all in favour yet, do we? No. Go ahead, Paul.
Thanks. So I'll read out my motion thus far. So it's, whereas the Holy Family community has undergone significant boundary changes over the past decade, and whereas students are unable to finish their school careers at St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic Secondary School with transportation, be it resolved the Halton Catholic District School Board will provide all Holy Family students attending St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic Secondary School affected by the June 2015 Oakville Secondary Boundary Review with bus transportation until the 2018-2019 school year. And the reason for me bringing up this motion today is to right a wrong from this board. This board passed a motion for a boundary review for the St. Thomas community back in June 2015, and in it we got lots of feedback. I looked back at the video and the discussion that we had. At no point during that meeting did we discuss grandfathering of the students who would be affected by the boundary changes that we made. And I think that was unfortunate, because we had set a precedent in past boundary reviews where we did grandfather students at the school they were originally from for their entire school career. So the problem with the motion that we made back in June 2015 is we left out a group of individuals who were in grade 9 and 10 at the time who would not be able to get bus transportation in their final years of school. And you know, one of the main reason for me bringing this up is this is a community that we've moved a significant amount of times. When Holy Family, when Holy Trinity was first built back in 2002, it was the only North Oakville school not being, North Oakville and past Niagawa, not being routed to the new Holy Trinity School. Parents at that time had to fight to have students sent to Holy Trinity School. Once again, the Falgarwood community came up again, and the Holy Family community came up again when we needed to move populations down to St. Thomas Aquinas, the new facility that we had there. So we moved them down south of the QEW. Now we went back to the same community again. It seems the same community again and again, where we asked them to move back to Holy Trinity. And the parents and the community as a whole has been very loyal to the Catholic school system. They have a relatively new high school just north of Upper Middle. So I think we want to send a positive message saying that we care about your students being in our system. And we can do this by grandfathering these last students at St. Thomas Aquinas and keeping them there for their full school year. So what we're asking for is funding for that busing that will take place. It's a limited amount of time to 2018, 2019. Correct.
All right, so other trustees who would like to speak to this are welcome to do so. We can go around the table, or if you want to get your thoughts all together, we'll take you one by one, but we are recording and the director is counting. Okay, Trustee Ian Tomasi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I just have two quick questions, and that would be how many students are we talking about, and what kind of cost would the board be looking at to change this?
Through you, Madam Chair, there are a total of 91 students who are grandfathered, 43 grade 10, 48 grade 11. 19 of those students are from Holy Family, 20 are from north of Dundas, and 52 students are from St. Mary's. There are 16 grade 9 courtesy riders, and a cost, did you ask about the cost? Cost for a bus to operate per year is $48,000, and according to HSTS, we would need 3 buses to run the routes and extend to those families, the other families besides Holy Family, the 19 students. So about $150,000 a year for 2 years would be $300,000. And it would be difficult to do double runs, so there would be, it's a long hike for that, for it to run it. This would be HSTS's route maximizer efficiency. They suggest three buses.
Motion only speaks to Holy Family itself, so that number is not 143,000. That's 148,000. It's 19 students of all those. It's a significantly smaller number than $148,000.
$48,000 for a bus per year.
Fine, but it's not the larger number of all the students north of Dundas. We're only talking about Holy Family, who asked for their issue to be heard today.
Just follow up then, so there is more than one school that's involved that is under the same predicament. So we would then be showing preference to one community over another. Okay, thank you.
So when we talk about schools north of Dundas, can you explain to me what schools were in existence north of Dundas that were included in this boundary review? The only school I don't know of any elementary school north of Dundas that was open in 2015. Is that
for me, and I think you're just referring to our motion in June 2015?
Trustee Marai was talking about the 19 students at Holy Family. That's all, but Trustee Ian Tomasi then spoke about the other students who would not be eligible if you're only talking about Holy Family, but that would create an inequity. Am I understanding you correctly? Oh, thank you. I didn't see you.
If you recall, the motion is very clear. It was not strictly just Holy Family. It made reference to students at St. Mary's and Holy Family communities. So we're not just talking about Holy Family. As to the question for a trustee, north of Dundas, those would be students that would be living in the rural areas north of Dundas when this had occurred, and they would have been attending either St. Mary's, so that's where the other numbers are coming from.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. When in 2015 we decided not to grandfather those students, was the goal of the committee or the senior staff recommendation to encourage the students living in those communities to choose to switch to Holy Trinity School? Was that really what we were hoping to achieve?
Superintendent Cipriano is the one that led that boundary review committee, so I'm going to ask him to speak.
Sure, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, that is precisely the intent. The committee was hoping, recognizing the population at St. Thomas and the pressure points for their student populations. The committee was making recommendations that they hoped would encourage families to take advantage of the new boundaries and start attending the new schools, the Holy Family Community, Holy Trinity, and the St. Mary's communities to St. Ignatius of Loyola in that first year. In fact, part of the motion was to approve cross-boundary for new grade 9s entering that first year to go to these new schools, even though the boundaries didn't take effect the following year. And they considered that typically students that are grandfathered to schools are not provided transportation, and so they felt that providing transportation for the 2 years was reasonable in that typically, as I'd mentioned, that grandfathered students do not receive transportation. They're eligible to finish their school year, typically in elementary school in grade 8, but without transportation. And that was their recommendation that was approved by the board.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of points to clarify. I mean, Superintendent Pinelli said it was clear there were more than one school, but the resolution does say it's just all Holy Family students affected.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may, she was speaking to the original June 2015 motion, the boundary review, and that encompassed other schools. This motion is directly recognizing a concern that the community brought up to this board to deal with the 19 students who go to and get bus from St. Thomas Aquinas.
So, Madam Chair, we're only talking about one school, 19 students, and $48,000 times 2 for 2 years. That's what we're talking about. So, $96,000 for the 2 years. That's the total cost. One bus for 2 years. That's what we're talking about. Okay.
So $48,000 for a complete bus if they just had it. That doesn't take into consideration the fact that if you change routes and we work with a consortium where we have public busing, that's the maximum amount of money it would cost to move these students. So that's the upper limit.
Yeah, are there students that are not coming into this exemption, that are not being included? I mean, are we going to have right, but I'm wondering if there are other students affected by that are not being grandfathered, that they're not going to benefit from this exemption.
Madam Chair, can you press your microphone so it's recorded?
Sorry. There may be other students, and staff can tell me this, correct me, there may be other students from other schools that are in similar situations. Superintendent Cipriano?
Through you, Madam Chair, as Superintendent Pinelli indicated, this same motion that was passed in 2015 affected the Holy Family community as well as the St. Mary's community. At that time, St. Mary's community encompassed both the north of Highway 5 region, which is now St. Gregory, and their own region west of Bronte Road. And so that's why there were, if once again, recognizing and appreciating that the motion is for only Holy Family, if it's the will of the board to extend this courtesy to those other communities, we would need two separate buses, one for north of 5 for those families that were attending St. Mary's from north of 5, and for the St. Mary's community as it exists now. So that would be 3 buses in total, if, once again, recognizing the motion is only for Holy Family. But that would cover all students affected from that motion from 2015, correct?
Okay, so the motion that's here affects Holy Family because we've had requests from Holy Family parents. We haven't had any from St. Mary's. So in fairness, the same resolution that was passed in 2015, affected both schools. Okay, all right. So in terms of justice, while we might do something with Holy Family now, by extension, St. Mary's should be treated the same way. Am I correct? Okay, thank you. All right, Trustee Manuela.
Can I go? I'm sorry, Paul. Actually, that addressed one of my concerns. Oh, do you want to go? That's fine. Oh, okay. That was actually just one of my concerns. How this only affects Holy Family. I feel like the community of St. Mary's might come and be like, what about us? That's just something to consider. Another question I had was, why did it take so long for it to come up to the board? Like, we've waited 2 years, maybe 3, for like this concern. So how have the students been going to St. Thomas Aquinas? And like, to me as a student, sounds like a lot of money. So like, why can't they continue?
Within the original resolution in June 2015, it was allowed up to the end of this June. So they're currently being bused. We allowed it up that period of point. But I think you bring up a good point, which is, these parents had concerns, I think, from day one. And I think, frankly, I think the board made a mistake, and I made a mistake not bringing it up at that meeting originally. And I think that it's important to recognize those mistakes and then try to fix them as best you can. But I want to bring up a point about, Madam Chair, you mentioned about, equity at this board. Because this board does go back and forth constantly when it comes to the grandfathering of it. And I'll point out to my fellow Burlington trustees that we did grandfather for the entire period Ascension elementary students during that boundary review back in 2011. And most of you were at this board. So I think we need to be responsive to parental groups that come to us to try to retain as many of the students and keep them in our Catholic system, and that's what the goal of this motion is today.
Thank you. Can I ask for the superintendent for Ascension, please? Whoever that superintendent is. As Tim's away.
That is a good point, but that came up when we were actually doing all the boundaries for Burlington. If we recall, it didn't come 2 years later. It was at the time that came to the board, if we go back historically. I do want to point out and share with the board that communication, because I was the superintendent at the time, and we were sharing a responsibility for Oakville. There was communication sent to parents as soon as this motion had passed, and then there was again subsequent communication that went to parents, not just Holy Family, all the parents that were involved in this motion, to ensure that communication was not just left down to the last 2 months. So it was communicated. We do have evidence of the letters that have been kept and so forth.
Superintendent Pinelli, do you recall what the motion was for Ascension? Was it grandfathering and busing the grade 8, so did it go into the high school?
I wasn't involved directly because I never had Burlington, but I think it was at the time that we were doing the boundaries. Again,
I'm trying to recall.
Motion in front of me. And that said that it would be, it says that as effective 2011-2012 school year, eligible students in the Assumption Catholic Elementary School attendance area boundary will be provided transportation to Assumption Catholic Secondary School per the board's transportation policy. And those students would have been the grade 9s and 10s, which would have continued on for their their final years. So that's what we voted on. Yeah. By saying eligible students at Ascension in the affected areas for 2011-2012, it assumed that it would be grade 9 and 10 students, and they continued on for the full period.
Thank you. We have, is this speaking to this issue, Camilla? No? Okay, Trustee Danko?
Madam Chair, I have no problem supporting this motion. I'm grateful that parents stuck with us through our boundary reviews to rebalance the capacity of our secondary school capacity in Oakville, so I have no problem supporting this motion.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent Cipriano?
I just wanted to add to the communication piece, we also did meet with families as well. I believe in May, June of 2015, with prospective high school secondary parents to offer the boundary change for that coming year. And we were very clear that transportation would cease to exist for their students to St. Thomas Aquinas in June 2017. And so once again, the intent of the committee was simply to try and motivate families and students and their children to attend the new boundaries in order to relieve the pressure, the attendance pressure at St. Thomas Aquinas. That was really the intent. It wasn't to cut off transportation to families. We recognize that it would be a challenge for families who chose to continue to St. Thomas.
Thank you. All right, so if it's, the motion is for Holy Family, and that would be one bus or two? One bus at 48,000. But then there is a secondary situation that would take another 2 buses? Okay, so we only need the 3 buses if St. Mary's comes. Is that correct? I know that, but I need to count. Okay, yes. Okay. Okay. Does anyone else? Trustee Carabella?
Well, I have a few things. First of all, just where the numbers are so up in the air, I'm really not sure what I'm committing to, because it could be less than the 96,000. So, I know, but you're saying for 2 years, but then we're saying it could even be less, right? Okay, well, I'd like to know what the exact figures are, and also what alternative route do the children have now that if this busing doesn't go through, what ways do they have to get to the school? Are they going to use public transportation?
That would be the responsibility and privilege of the parents to decide how to get their children to the school.
And yes, and then so that money too that we're allocating for this, where is that coming from?
Madam Director.
From the budget. From the budget, and that transportation budget, which is 600,000 over our funding currently.
I'd like the director to clarify that. That money is being spent right now in the budget because those students are traveling right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's the whole crux of the matter here is that we don't normally approve transportation when we grandfather with a school. We were generous and provided 2 years of transportation at the original motion, and that's going beyond what our policy has been in the past. And besides the St. Mary's students, approving the further extension to 4 years would just open the floodgates for future transportation costs, which would be quite exorbitant. When you take a look at a place like Milton that's growing continuously, and the high schools and the possible boundary changes there, I mean, the ramifications could be quite expensive for us.
Thank you. Trustee Carabello, I don't feel you've got your entire 3 minutes. Did you finish? You don't have to use your 3 minutes, but I wasn't sure if you had finished.
So I'm just wondering if there was other parent involvement as well, like was there a petition, or we have how many people?
No, we have received a few emails, but there is no petition that we have received. Any other trustees wish to speak to this matter? No? Okay. All right, then Trustee Marai, you have 3 minutes to close, please.
Thanks very much. And I want to comment on a couple things that Trustee said. First off, Trustee Rowe mentioned, well, this would open the floodgates to other issues and other school communities bringing this up. Well, the fact is, in 2011, you voted to allow this at another school. So we already opened the floodgates. And further to that, this goes to Trustee Carabella's question, what this motion's about. It's about fairness for our community. So this board allowed this to occur at a Burlington school. We're dealing with, and I know you know this community well, we're dealing with the Holy Family community, which this board, frankly, has kicked around quite a bit. Moved them from high school to high school, which has, by the way, allowed us to save tens of thousands of dollars to put into other schools throughout our system. So they're now asking, can we stay within our school community for a final 2 years? We're not committing to $48,000 forever. This is a 2-year commitment that we already have in the budget over the last 2 years that we'd like to continue. So I think the question is not what's the exact dollar figure, which we know it's going to be, lower than what's been said. The question is, what's fair for the Holy Family community?
Thank you. Are we ready for the vote? I'm sorry, no, you can't speak. Anyone? We're finished? All right. Okay. So I will read the motion and then we'll take the vote. All right. Whereas the Holy Family community has undergone significant boundary changes over the past decade, and whereas students are unable to finish their school careers at St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic Secondary School with transportation, be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board will provide all Holy Family students attending St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic Secondary School, affected by the June 2015 Oakville Secondary Boundary Review, with bus transportation until the 2018-2019 school year. All right. So we're going to have a recorded vote, and we will start with Trustee Quinn. In favor? Okay, thank you.
In favor.
Manuela, in favor? Opposed?
In favor.
Okay.
In favor.
All right. Okay. Okay.
In favor.
Okay, 2, 4, 5. It passes. Okay. Thank you very much. And now we will move on to our next one, which is 8.2, Notice of Motion, Employee Assistance Program, Trustee Danko. Trustee Danko, you'll have 5 minutes to present, and the trustees will speak once for a maximum of 3 minutes, and then Trustee Danko, you can close for another 3 minutes.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I have to move it to get it on the floor first, so maybe a second or before I can say anything. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is really just to get the ball rolling on an outsourced employee assistance program. We've discussed a couple of times at this table that the funding for wellness has been removed, and the teachers union have taken over part of the benefits from this type of program. So there has to be a change in the way the employee assistance program is currently operating. And this request for a proposal will give external providers, a chance to come up with proposals to operate an outsourced version of the employee assistance program. So it's been a change that's come from above. We've seen our policy at the policy committee, so we'll eventually down the road need to change the policy. One thing additionally I do need to do to amend this motion, I want to amend my own motion. So I'm going to move that the phrase request for proposal be struck out and replaced with competitive bid process, which really gives it a little bit more latitude in the type of competition that we can have for this. That's really what I meant at the outset anyway, so a request for proposal would have been a type of process, but a competitive bid process more accurately reflects what could be done. So I need a seconder to change that language, please. Okay, so we're back to the main motion, so I think that's about all I had to say. Like I say, once the bid is undertaken, then we can look at the policy itself. So really what would be left is that the employee assistance program would be looking after all other employee groups aside from teachers.
Thank you. All right, trustees, you have 3 minutes to speak to this. Trustee Quinn?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to Trustee Danko, can you give me further clarification on what the union groups will be taking on as opposed to what the current EAP offers now, and how many remaining employees would be in this kind of program?
Madam Chair, and I'll ask Superintendent O'Hara to help me out with this one, but the major change is that because the teachers union is taking over its benefits program, that a lot of the functions of EAP will become part of that program, and that would leave the other employee groups. So essentially we would be supporting a smaller pool of employees with the existing program. That's really the main part of the change, and if Superintendent O'Hara has anything to add, please do.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Just to clarify, the new Employee Life and Health Trust that is now being run for OECTA and for teachers that can access them, they have a component that allows for counseling services for some specific areas. So it wouldn't totally replace what our existing program has, but there are components of our existing EAP program which now are being covered by this Employee Life and Health Trust. We would anticipate that future Employee Life and Health Trusts for other employee groups will also perhaps have some similar components, to which at this time it would be premature for us to come to that conclusion. But what we do know is that there is some overlap now between the OECTA Employee Life and Health Trusts and our own trust in terms of some of the types of issues that a teacher could go and receive counseling from. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Quinn, a follow-up?
Thank you. So, understanding that then, I'm wondering if there is enough information in this resolution, because we're asking to send out a competitive bid process, but we're not fully describing for whom and for what services we require for those non-unionized groups.
It's my understanding that this is the way in which the staff would send out a proposal such as this. You've told them that it's an outsourced employee assistance program. So you see what they have to offer and then what you need.
Madam Chair, we will have a detailed bid. I mean, we just need to move ahead with it before we can change the policy itself.
All right, thank you. Okay, anyone else wish to speak to this issue? You've got 3 minutes. Don't all rush. No? Okay. No more? Okay. So we'll close it then on that discussion, and we'll take the vote. All right. I'll read it. Be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board proceed with the CB process, competitive bid process, to gather proposals for an outsourced employee assistance program. We will take a recorded vote. Trustee Quinn.
Favor.
In favor.
Trustee Rowe. Christina.
In favor.
In favor?
Vice Chair Trites. Trustee Murray. Trustee Michael. Trustee Ian Tomasi. Trustee Ingrid. Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Thank you. .3 renaming of Mother Teresa Catholic Elementary School, and I think the director is going to speak to that.
Through you, Madam Chair, this is the action report. We brought a staff report at our last board meeting to recommend the name that Mother Teresa Catholic Elementary School be renamed to Saint Teresa of Calcutta Catholic Elementary School in light of Mother Teresa's canonization this past September. And the staff have discussed and confirmed this is the proper name for Saint Teresa. And I'll leave that put on the floor, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Can we have a mover, please? Trustee Intomasi, seconded by Trustee Marai. Any questions or comments to this? No? All right. We'll call the vote then. Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Ingrid? Trustee Intomasi? Trustee Michael? Trustee Marai? Vice Chair Trites? Trustee Danko?
In favor.
Trustee Christina? Trustee Rowe? Trustee Manuela? Trustee Quinn?
In favor.
Thank you. 8.4, Policy I-26, Student Trustees on the Halton Catholic District School Board. Trustee Danko.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this was brought up to the Policy Committee last week, and I'll move the resolution. Be it resolved that the Halton Catholic District School Board accepts the recommendation of the Policy Committee that Policy I-26, Student Trustees on the Halton Catholic District School Board, name be changed to Policy I-26, Student Trustees of the Halton Catholic District School Board, and be approved as amended. So we need a seconder, please.
Trustee Quinn, I have a couple of issues with this particular motion in that it doesn't appear to be as transparent as perhaps it could be, and I think that was just the way it happened. This recommendation, which is accurate, but it's basically referring to student trustees of the Halton Catholic District School Board instead of student trustees on, basically changing one letter, an on, an N to an F, I guess. It has not got anything about the background information whereby you're changing the process, which is a much bigger aspect of this particular motion than the changing of a preposition. So can we add something to that? And it doesn't bother me if we decide not to, but I'm putting on the floor that we're not being as transparent as perhaps we should be, and I will ask that that be recorded. So if we were to say that not only are we changing the names, but we're also updating it, then that would cover everything. Okay? So anyone wish to speak to that or agree with that or disagree with that? It's an idea that I'm putting out. That's all it is, an idea. Trustee Danko?
Madam Chair, would you call upon, I know Superintendent Overholt is not present tonight, so perhaps I could call upon a substitute presenter for the meat of this policy change. Superintendent McGillicuddy, please.
Through you, Madam Chair, I guess I would, the first observation I would make is that this policy comes to the table as an action item this evening by virtue of a motion that was passed at the policy meeting itself requesting that it do so. And I know, for instance, that the student trustees here with us this evening have some observations about some further consultation they would prefer to make with their fellow students before the trustees were to give their disposition on the item. So if the chair would recognize one of them.
So I can just start it off for the three of us. But as we said at the policy meeting, it was the new motion that we presented at the policy meeting was one that we had only kind of thought up and developed a couple of days ago. And since that time, Manuela, Christina, and I have kind of, we've heard the concerns of the board, especially on stakeholder input. And as the chair did mention at the policy meeting, that was a big concern about addressing Senate and contacting Senate who are going to be affected by this policy. And is our team that we work so closely with and we owe so much of our success with too. And so we scrambled kind of in the last week to get the input of Senate and make sure that their voices are also heard on this policy. And something that we heard overwhelmingly, through the kind of quick contact that we were able to get, is that our Senate feel like they really want to voice their opinions on this and be further consulted on the matter. Our next Senate meeting and our last Senate meeting is next week. And, you know, in the week that we have been sending out emails and trying to get conference calls, we do not feel as trustees that we have been able to gather enough input from our Senate to be able to stand here and say that, you know, we have consulted them fully, and, you know, we have their input and their voice, and after all, they are such a big aspect of our job and is such an important team that we have to consider in all aspects, and we owe so much to. So the three of us wanted to ask, and we wanted to recognize the immense support that we've gotten, but we also want to ask for the motion for more time to be able to do these thorough consultations, especially with our Senate, and also to take into consideration that we are going to be choosing our new Senate members very, very shortly. This is something new that we started this year in choosing our Senate members for next year by the end of this school year. And as those new Senate members are informed of their position on Senate, since they are going to be the ones that are most heavily affected by this policy change, and since they're going to have to live through the first elections and go through that process, we want a chance to be able to consult them. And since we haven't chosen them yet and we haven't gotten a chance to consult them, we would really be grateful for that extra time to be able to have their voices heard on this matter, because after all, our biggest duty is to our students and to make sure that their voices are accurately and effectively communicated to this board. I don't know if Christina and Manuela.
As Ingrid mentioned, this kind of all came together really quickly, and we do really appreciate all the support that the trustees gave us at the policy meeting. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend, but Ingrid and Manuela informed me. And being here, our role is to represent students. And without consulting students who essentially elect us, then why are we here? And so that's why we all three feel that we could not vote in such a matter where the students are the ones picking us, and we haven't even so much asked them. We had a very brief conference call with only some of our lead senators, and that was only one of the opinions. Our student senate is compiled of over 90 students who essentially elected us, and without consulting all of them, it would be unfair to kind of just assume where their head is at and where their feelings are at. So we just kindly ask that maybe this even be pushed to October of next year, so we can kind of talk to this Senate and also get the opinions of our new Senate coming in, because as many of our senators currently are graduating, so we have almost two perspectives on this to weigh even more stakeholders that have been through it, ones coming in, what everyone's opinions are, to more effectively make a decision for all of our students and not just our own personal opinions. Thank you.
So I'll try not to reiterate everything Ingrid and Christina said. However, I strongly feel with both of their opinions, this being pretty much my third last meeting here at the board, this policy is something that probably won't affect me or as a student trustee, or quite frankly the three incomings for next year. It will affect those to come. The policy we brought forward was definitely something, because we drafted it so short, in such a short time frame, it is something that we feel would benefit our position as a student trustee. However, with further consultation of the student senate and the student representation, we can get further opinions and have further discussions on what will actually affect those who will be taking part in this policy. For that reason is we hope that you guys support us in pushing this to a later board meeting and welcoming me back so I can see kind of how this plays out.
So, based on what we've heard, Madam Chair, I'd like to move that this policy be sent back to the Policy Committee to be dealt with according to policy schedule.
So I'm speaking to Trustee Rowe's amendment. I think that if I'm hearing the student trustees correctly, that they would like it postponed until the second meeting of October, and it to be discussed in policy sometime prior to that. So I don't, as the chair of the policy committee, I have no problem bringing it onto an agenda prior to October, afterward, so it has a chance to get some more consultation. So I think if Trustee Rowe could say that it's the second meeting of October, I think, yeah.
I shall say so.
And I support that, yeah.
In favor.
In favor?
Opposed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just trying to get to the right spot in the PDF. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move policy I-42 out of province staff travel and to approve the recommendations of the policy committee as presented.
Any questions, comments? Trustee Quinn.
Through you, Madam Chair, just want the policy chair to reiterate that there were no real changes in this policy update that we have, that we've made in this.
Could you use your microphone, please?
It's right there.
Is it on? I'm sorry. All right, speak louder. Thank you. Okay. So, was there a question there?
Madam Chair, if you please. I asked
can't hear you, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I asked if the policy chair could reiterate that there were no changes to the previous version of this policy and we're merely updating the date.
Thank you. Trustee Danko.
Madam Chair, I'd like to reiterate that there are no policy changes and that we are really updating the date that we have reviewed the policy, that we have looked at.
Turn your microphone on, please, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It wasn't.
Now
it is.
Wasn't. You're quite correct, it wasn't. It's on now, but it's going off in just a minute. Any other questions to this? No? All right, can we take the vote, please?
Could I ask everyone place their microphone on when they vote? Otherwise, it's not recorded on YouTube. And then people will have to go back and find the records of the vote on paper.
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Trustee Ingrid.
In favor.
In favor.
In favor.
Trustee Murray.
In favor.
Vice Chair Trites.
In favor.
Trustee Danko.
In favor.
Trustee Christina.
In favor.
Trustee Rowe.
In favor.
Trustee Manuela.
In favor.
Trustee Quinn.
In favor.
The next one is 8.6, psychological testing of individual students. Trustee Danko.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move policy 2-13, psychoeducation, psychological testing of individual students.
Thank you. A seconder? Trustee Murray. Any questions, comments to this? Trustee Carabella.
I know we discussed this in policy, and I just had some thoughts afterwards, and so we were trying to, we have somebody new that's hired, is that correct? That's during the summer, and I just wondered about what would need, okay, just, that's what I wanted to make sure.
Through the chair, we hired Dr. Nicole Law. We hired her as a result of when the budget was reconciled in the fall, there was an opportunity to add some staff, and we did feel that the opportunity to add another psychologist to our team was a prudent measure to help to address our wait list, and we were able to do so. Dr. Law joined us about a month and a half ago. She's come as she's wrapped up her case files where she was working before. It's been a gradual move over to us. She is now with us on a full-time basis. In terms of the summer assessments, it's a practice that we do on a regular basis. We are able to do our assessments using our existing psychology staff at a cost of about half of the cost it would cost to send it out externally. And we give staff the opportunity to do so, and our goal in this is to reduce our wait list as much as we can over the summer months.
So I just have a follow-up. Can we hire somebody for a shorter length of time, like part-time, just to further decrease our wait list?
I'd like to see, with the addition of Dr. Law, and as we talked about with at policy meeting, we did have a staff absence for a long period of time because of illness. Now that staff is back and Dr. Law has joined us, with the addition of our summer assessments, from a prudence perspective, we'd like to see that through and see what kind of an impact we can make on our wait list.
Any other questions, comments? Trustee Quinn.
I just asked, through you, Madam Chair, that Dr. Brown keep us up to date on that wait list, and if he is making the progress that he hopes for, and if not, to please come back to us and give us an update so we can see what we can do to speed it up.
What kind of time frame are we looking at with regard to that? Are we looking at what you can get through over the summer, Brendan, or before that time? It would be nice to have a short wait list.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to. And as I said at the policy meeting, right now we're at around 12 months, and other boards, neighboring boards actually, are at 2 to 3 years. 12 months, though, we don't think is good enough. We want to be better than that. And as we talked about at the policy meeting, we think 8 months is a reasonable get to, because that's within one school year. That's our goal, to get there within 8 months. I'd be happy to report back in September about how the summer assessments went. And in terms of our tracking toward an 8-month wait list, I would say we would need at least 6 months, if not a year, to be able to accurately measure that. So next winter or next spring, to be able to report back, I'm telling you right now we're around 12 months, be able to report back saying where are we in about 8 to 10 months from now.
But you will tell us in the fall, in September, where you are?
In terms of
how well you've done over the summer?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, the summer assessment, we use existing budget. So there's no, again, from a prudence perspective, we're always trying to think about how we can do things efficiently and effectively, and we use the additional resources that we've already embedded in our budget in order to maximize our summer assessments.
Thank you. Any other questions pertaining to this? No? All right. Okay, so all in favor? Trustee Quinn?
In favor.
Trustee Rowe? Trustee Christina?
In favor.
Trustee Danko?
In favor?
Vice Chair Trites?
In favor.
Trustee Moran?
In favor.
Trustee Michael?
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi? Trustee Ingrid?
In favor.
Trustee Caravella? Thank you. Moving on to 8.7, Policy 2-20, Child Abuse and Protection of Students. Trustee Danko.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendations of the Policy Committee that Policy 2-20, Child Abuse and Protection of Students, be approved as amended.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Trustee Intomasi, any questions or comments? Trustee Ingrid.
I was just wondering exactly what the amendments are, as not being able to sit on policy, not kind of being part of the discussion, just to kind of be clear on what the amendments are.
We'll try and do that for you, but any trustee, any student trustee can come to policy committee meeting anytime they wish.
They coincide with Senate.
Oh, well, I guess there's a priority.
I would love to come more often,
Okay.
but it just, the scheduling is
No problem.
an issue, but we try when we can.
Absolutely. Trustee Danko, Yes, is that,
Just for information, that the policy committee meetings are also recorded and available on YouTube, so not only for your own need, but for the public as well. They can see what we've discussed in policy, and then it references what we're voting on here today.
thank you. Superintendent Brown is going to speak to this.
Updates were minimal. The updates were just updating two more recent legislations. So it's pretty much the same policy as it was before from a big picture policy perspective in terms of our responsibility to protect students.
All right, anything else? Thank you, Brendan. All right, all in favor? Trustee Quinn?
In favor.
Trustee Rowe?
In favor.
Trustee Christina?
In favor.
Trustee Danko?
In favor?
Vice Chair Trites?
In favor.
Trustee Murray?
In favor.
Trustee Michael?
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi?
In favor.
Trustee Ingrid?
In favor.
And Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Thank you. You're working hard tonight, Trustee Danko. Okay, 8.8, Policy 2-29, Inclusion and Range of Placement Options for Identified Exceptional Students. Go ahead.
Depends who you ask, Madam Chair. It depends who you ask. I would like to move Policy 2-29. Move that the Halton Catholic District School Board accept the recommendation of Policy Committee that Policy 2-29, Inclusion and Range of Placement Options for Identified Exceptional Students, and be approved as amended.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Trustee Rowe. Any questions or comments to this particular proposal? None? All right. We're going to take the vote. All in favor? Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Ingrid?
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi?
In favor.
Trustee Michael?
In favor.
Trustee Murray?
In favor.
Trustee Vice Chair Trites?
In favor.
Trustee Danko?
In favor.
Trustee Christina?
In favor.
Trustee Rowe? Trustee Quinn?
In favor.
Thank you. All in favor? 8.9, Policy 2-40, Bullying Prevention. Trustee Danko?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move, resolve that the Halton Catholic District School Board accepts the recommendations of the Policy Committee that Policy 2-40, Bullying Prevention, and be approved as amended.
Thank you. A seconder, Trustee Murray. Any questions or comments to this policy? All right, we'll take the vote. Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Ingrid?
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi? Trustee Michael?
In favor.
Trustee Murray?
In favor.
Vice Chair Trites?
In favor.
Trustee Danko?
In favor?
Trustee Christina?
In favor.
Trustee Rowe?
In favor.
Trustee Quinn?
In favor.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Trustee Danko, and thank you to the superintendents who worked so hard on all of those policies. We're now going to go into staff reports. 9.1, 2017-2018 budget estimates update. Superintendent Ngoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to keep this short. It's Aaron who's going to have the lengthy presentation. We have our first very preliminary draft of the budget for 2017-18. Just in summary, it incorporates growth in both elementary and secondary panels of 730 average daily enrollment, plus an additional 64 average daily enrollment increase in the international students for over the current year. Expenses include $2.5 million in program enhancements that have been identified in, I believe it's in Table 3 of the report, and $6.9 million in additional staffing, or approximately 105.4 full-time equivalent of staffing. That is in Table 2, and that is both in terms of addressing the growth in our system as well as additional staffing that has been identified through the various collective agreements. The initial draft does not include the new initiatives that have been identified as part of Table 4, so they are not in the budget currently, and also it doesn't include the commitment to build our capital and operating reserves, so there's no transfers to the reserves at this point. Overall, we are in a surplus position of $942,000, and Aaron will provide you with a bit more detail around how we arrived at that number and a proposal that we have in order to be able to include the priorities that are identified, as well as build some of the reserves for some of the important capital priorities that have been identified in the system to be spent on our schools. And just as a final note, the approach that is outlined in your report is slightly different than what we have in the presentation, and it's a result of an additional meeting that we had on Monday, and we went through back to the drawing board to try to find an even better approach so that we can continue to purchase the curriculum materials that we do need, as well as incorporate the new initiatives that have been identified. So keep that in mind. It is a little different than what is in the report, and I believe it's a better approach. It allows us to do more within the same context. It's just looking at a couple of different ways. And with that, I'll pass it on to Aaron to walk you through a presentation, and feel free to ask any questions throughout the presentation as well as at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, and good evening, everyone. Starting off with the budget updates, 2017-18. So the agenda is we're going to look at enrollment, go through the revenue and expenses, look at the staffing program enhancements that we've already put in the budget, as Roxanne has mentioned, the preliminary financial position, the new initiatives that we're just speaking of, the goals in the proposal, the revised financial position, and then there was a request from the last meeting, or a couple meetings ago, for central staffing support updates and next steps. So, budget enrollment. So you can see here, here's a chart of our overall enrollment from the estimates. The 2016-17 are obviously our revised estimates, as we're going to not finish the school year yet, but you can see that we are trending up. The growth is, we're looking at 2.2% over the 2016-17 estimates, as well as approximately, it was 4.6% over the 15-16, which is the last actual values we have. So we're looking at, for the fall, 33,830 students as an average daily enrollment between secondary and elementary. This next graph shows the difference between secondary and elementary, with the secondary being the blue and the green being the elementary. Again, we're looking at an increase. Having said that, the increase in the secondary level is significantly higher at 5% or so over the 16-17 revised estimates. Elementary is up about 1% or so, but the secondary panel has really jumped. This could be contributed to the grade 8, more grade 8s going into the secondary school, as well as students from the public board or our coterminous board that could be being brought over with the advanced placement or IB program. Could be a motivating factor. So this last graph just shows the different grade levels. So we have the grade 1 to 3 in blue, the green being 4 to 8, the orange being 9 to 12. You can see they're all trending up, except for the JK to SK, which looks like it was a huge jump, but that's really kind of misleading because that was the full-day kindergarten. So the estimates, the revenues. So we're looking at revenues of $406 million this year, with the majority going into or coming from the GSNs at 88% between the municipal taxes and the legislative grants. This is a busy table that you can review later, but I just want to bring to you the attention that the growth that we have is 4.6 in revenue. And I'll look at to why that growth is 4.6 in a couple slides. So the revenue allocation. So the legislative grants and municipal taxes combined for 4.7%. Well, why is that? Well, part of it's due to the salary increases as a result of the collective agreement extensions of the 1.5% plus the 5.5% lump sum. There's also additional staffing as a result of that same extension. There's a 4% increase to benefits. And there's the required growth as to our growing enrollment numbers, as well as a 2% increase in non-salary component to kind of keep up with the raising costs, such as utilities. Other provincial grants decreased 14.6%. Well, why was that? Well, additional, I don't know if anyone here knows what they are, but the education program others, or EPOs, you might have heard. Well, we haven't received what our allotment is for this year. So as of right now, we can't put them in the budget because we don't have them. They haven't been announced as of yet. This is an interesting one too. Tuition fees and the use of school rental revenue has increased 43% and 20.8%. And why is that? Well, it's the expected increase in international student enrollment for next year, as well as the increase in rental fees for our facilities due to demand. So we've looked at the revenues, we'll look at the expenses now. So our expenses for the upcoming year are $396.1 million is what we're estimating right now. with the majority being in salaries and wages of approximately, 67%, about 80% or so is in salaries, wages, and benefits.
Sorry, if I can just add to that. So if you're looking at the revenue wheel and the expense wheel, no, we don't have $10 million. It is simply the operating, if you're looking at operating and capital expenses and revenues, and then you also have what's called out-of-compliance pieces. So the education development charges, CDC, would be outside. There's accounting adjustments, and then you have the surplus. So once you put those together, perhaps if we can go back, Aaron, just for a minute, to the revenue allocation table, you'll see the $406 million is more in the dark blue in the middle there. And then you take away all of the other items to get to where you are. So really, the surplus is $942. You have to take into account the out-of-compliance item. So that's what we're working with. It's not the $10 million difference between the two wheels.
Yeah, thanks, Rosanna. Yeah. So let's look at the expenses. So salaries and wages have increased 4.8%. Well, why was that? Well, as we mentioned before with our revenue, it's the same idea applies. We have additional expenses relating to our collective agreement extensions as well as the growth at the board. Supplies and services has increased 8%. Well, why is that? Well, we've increased the school budgets at all the schools. We have increased utility budgets due to the rising cost of our utilities. We have an increased textbook budget as well as an increased IT budget. Can you break down which amount give us the 8%? I can. Thank you for asking. It is approximately 1 million is roughly the amount for utilities. About 100,000 or so is for IT. About 500 or so is for textbooks. And about, that's roughly the big ticket items. And about 100,000 or so, Trustee Quinn, for the budgets of the schools. You're welcome. Staffing and program enhancements. So you can see here that these are the staffing changes we have for the upcoming year. So we have 27.2 elementary teachers. Well, how do we arrive at that number? Well, about 12.7 of them is related to enrollment. Another 12.5 of the teachers is related to the collective agreement. And we also have an additional 2 teachers for certs and for an SEA lead due to requirements. The secondary panel, because of the growth, we need we require an actual 40.2 teachers, but the majority of that is to the growth. If you remember, the growth was 5% or so. So we require an additional 34.2 teachers. And then the remaining teachers we have there, about 6, that's due to the collective agreement. The paraprofessional line, we have an additional speech and language pathologist, which again was a result of the collective agreement, as well as a child and youth counselor and a social worker, which would total 3.
I just wanted to add, the staffing here is still draft, and they still have to be finalized with the unions. This is the proposal that we have currently, so just in case it may change, I just wanted to point that out.
Looking at our support staff, a lot of these are due to the agreements as well. So we required an additional 14 EAs, educational assistants, as well as additional early childhood educators of about 8, and those 8 are actually due to growth. Custodial staff is 4, again due to the collective agreement. School office administrative staff due to the agreement is 5. Library technicians and computer techs are 1 each, for a total of 33. Senior administrative staff, we have secondary vice principal, a half position as a result of for the international student program due to its rising enrollment, as well as a half position due to growth at one of the high schools. So the total administrative staff is 1 in the school, or senior school administrative staff, I apologize. And then the administrative staff at the board, or at the administrative staff for the board, is we have the athletic convener of 1 that we have talked about earlier in this year.
The custodial staff, how many of the non-unionized staff will be brought in as part of the hiring versus the QP staff?
These staff here, Trustee Quinn, are due to the collective agreement, so they will be unionized staff being brought in for this, for this part here. So this would definitely be unionized staff being brought in as part of the 4. It's part of the agreement.
But in the budget in general for hiring staff, are we looking at hiring non-unionized custodial staff as well as part of our growth?
Within the custodial staff, the permanent staff, we don't have any non-union, so they're all QP. There are certain schools that have contractual custodial staff, but our own staff are all part of QP for the custodians.
So for clarification, are the new schools that have come online or the growth that's being projected for 27-18, are those unionized positions or are those contracted positions?
Madam Chair, Trustee Quinn, for this coming school year, there are no schools being open in September. There'll be some custodial adjustments that occur, and that will involve some non-union and QP staff and some contracting that will be involved, and that's included in the budget under contracted services.
So the program enhancement, which has already been built into the budget, let's take a look at this area here. We have the school wireless network infrastructure upgrades. We have the school operations and maintenance cost increase. We have the student accommodation and repair contingency fund, advanced placement, international baccalaureate, expansion of international program and such. You can see here that the mileage reimbursement, I don't want to go verbatim down the list, but they total about $2.5 million or so, and they've already been incorporated into this preliminary budget. So this is already in the budget, resulting still in the $942,000 that Roxana mentioned before. So here's our preliminary financial position. So I'd like just to focus on the top number where you see our operating surplus is $942,000. See the in-year change right in the middle there? That's where we're at right now. So after all those enhancements have been put through, we have a $942,000 in-year surplus. So the new initiatives. These are the new initiatives that senior staff has looked over and have brought before the board. I'm going to go through the list quickly. It totals about $750,000. We have a non-union job evaluation review. We have an FTE relating to that evaluation, an equity officer, the Empower Reading Program, which again to the surveys, it's important. It came out in the surveys that the special education is required or is very important to the board. The server analyst position, again that came out in the survey as well. Applied education, the 1.0 FTE for the records coordinator on a 1-year contract, the wellness program, electronic file project, and the Museum of Tolerance. So the budget goals and the proposal that we have and how to implement these new initiatives.
Oops. I'll ask you to go back. Could you tell me about the Museum of Tolerance, please? What is that educational tour? I know that it involves 5 individuals, but I need to know the program. Or is there PD in there, or is there something to do with staff?
Yes, it is. It's professional development. It is a 2-day program in Los Angeles that is also supplemented by the Simon Wiesenthal Center. So the cost is offset by the organization along with the board. The intent of the program is to allow and develop professionally the leaders, and of course we recognize that we can't do everybody all at once, but the Simon Wiesenthal Center also requires that anyone that attends their professional development also prepare a plan, so there will be accountability. In other words, the leaders, the 5 individuals, one secondary principal from each of the different regions would be required not only for us as a board in terms of what are they going to do when they come back and how are they going to move this along in their school communities with their student leaders, and as well moving equity and inclusivity in their school community. So there is accountability from our end and also from the organization because they're also investing in this.
It's more than the 50,000 then, if they're investing in it?
Well,
Where
they're
does that break
investing
down?
their bit.
Okay, where does that break down? How does that break down for 2 days? That's $10,000 per person for 2 days, for a 2-day workshop, transportation, hotel, or do we give a donation?
No, we've gone back. I've gone back when we originally put this in the budget. We thought it was going to be more expensive. I've gone back to the organization. They have provided us with some changes in terms of cost. They're still working in terms of hotels and all the rest of that. It is not 50,000 now. And I think, Roxana, you're going to be talking about that later on in the slides.
We do, Madam Chair, have a revised initiatives scheduled to show once we discuss the proposal.
Trustee Danko?
Madam Chair, I hate to be a stickler, but there's a lot of things here. Could we have each superintendent that has something on this list in table 4 in the report, or on this slide actually, just kind of give in 2 sentences what each thing is, and maybe we could, since we did the Museum of Tolerance already, maybe we could just do the ones above that. Well, could we do all of them? I mean, Human Resources has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The non-union job evaluation review is to, again, go through a formal process with a consultant to review all non-union jobs and to also do an external comparator analysis. Moving on to the job evaluation officer position. Again, going through that process, there's the need to help coordinate the rewriting of job descriptions, the collecting of information to feed it to the consultant, and all the organizing that happens behind the scenes. So that's to support that initiative. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Chair, the equity officer, the person would be rounding out the whole well-being strategy, which includes our mental health lead, faith development, healthy and safe schools. They would form a well-being team. They would also be looking at our policies, our hiring on a bigger scale for equity and inclusive purposes.
I got it. The Empower Reading Program is a program run through St. Kitts Hospital. It's a research-based program to help support struggling readers. We target students that are in the primary grades in congruence with our focus on early intervention. Students have made through the larger research and certainly in our Halton school-based research tremendous gains in reading and are not entering the spec ed stream as a result. They're getting the tools to learn as a result. We have this program running in over 20 of our schools, about half of our elementary schools. We've been doing so in partnership with schools. So this is an opportunity to expand the program to all schools, the Empower Reading Program to all elementary schools in our board.
Okay, so that would be extended in September?
It would be, yes. I mean, with trustee approval, we would be able to move on this with August training and moving into September.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The server analyst position is the current gap in skills and requirements that we have within our IT services department. We need some support in order to implement the upgrades to the system, to look at the security of information and backup and data recovery and so forth. It has been identified in the prior year as well, but has not made it in the budget, and it's up again for trustees' consideration.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, this person would be like a clerk type for 1 year that would assist our privacy manager with records retention, CASL compliance, helping schools with OSR handling.
It's connected, it's somewhat, when we currently, this would allow us to replace the funding that we, would have for our current program. Our hope would be that, a new EAP program would have a wellness component, and that could either replace this or significantly reduce, the need for this funds. Thank you.
Electronic file project.
Again, the purpose of this is to try to modernize our human resources files, to try to move them to electronic. Right now it's paper. Ultimately, we're drowning in paper, and we're trying to get to a point where, as I said, hopefully we can reduce some of the work that goes with having to physically file and maintain those kinds of files. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from trustees on that? Trustee Quinn, then Trustee Carabella.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to Joe. The first one, the non-union job evaluation review, and the last one, electronic file project. They, from your description, sounded like finite positions. Are they to be ongoing, or are these projects that once complete, they will come off the budget?
Again, through the chair, the non-union job evaluation review should be completed in a year's cycle. The last time we went through that, it went slightly more than a year. The job evaluation officer position is tied to that project, so our intention would be that it would close out as soon as the project is done. With respect to the electronic file project, $50,000 won't do it. What that is to try to start it up, and it's going to be it's a huge project, and it's going to take a number of years to finally complete. Thank you.
I had that same question, and then, so thank you, and I have it answered. And another question would be, so, no, actually, I'm fine. Good.
Quinn?
Thank you. To the director, the $130,000 in your office equity officer, what could an equity officer add to the board that yourself, senior staff, and senior people in the relative unions don't bring us today? And why is $130,000 annual ongoing investment a necessity at this time that we're not doing right now?
Right now, through you, Madam Chair, right now, equity is spread across many portfolios, and this would be more condensed. So one, just like our mental health lead looks after all of the mental health for our students, the equity lead would also alleviate and look over all of our portfolios to ensure that we're delivering program equitably, we're serving our students in an equitable fashion, all our policies are inclusive and have that kind of language. It's one person we can't have principals right now at a level because we're not allowed to have supervising principals, so we would have to look at how do we hire this person at a level that can supervise these kinds of initiatives.
Follow up, please, Madam Chair. So, are we not doing a good job of it now? I think we talk about equity here in tremendous support of it, and all our policies come to us through the lens of equity, and so I'm worried about $130,000 in this time of parsimony going to something that we're already doing very well.
That's your opinion, Trustee Quinn. I think we're trying to look at all of the requirements under the equity umbrella that come to us from the Ministry of Education. We look at Aboriginal education, that's one piece of the pie. For one of our superintendents, our faith formation, special education, it's all pieced out into our superintendents, and we were looking at having someone who could oversee that.
There's no current envelope from the province to pay for that position right now.
Correct.
Okay. Paul, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on a question on the electronic file project, obviously a worthwhile endeavor to do and something we need to get on, certainly. I guess I have two questions. One, have other boards already done this? Like, have they completed the process? And I guess my second question is there a way for us to, and maybe there is a plan already in place, to where this is exactly going, or how much it's going to cost in the end? Because organizations, especially in Ontario, have a history when it comes to electronic file projects, and I'm sure there are far more competent people at this organization that will do it in an efficient way. But my only concern is we don't know what the total numbers at the end of the day. It's questionable. So maybe you could provide a bit more information on how large you expect this project to become.
Thank you, and through the chair, this is giving us some monies to get started to do some additional studies on how big of a project it will be, and to answer a lot of those particular questions. The last time we put a proposal forward on this, again, a number of budgets ago, the world has kind of changed in terms of electronic files, and so a lot of the costs and the equipment that we were looking at, obviously things have modernized and changed significantly. There are school boards and many public sector organizations that have gone to electronic HR files. Dufferin Peel would be an example of a board that did do that a number of years ago, and I'm talking probably about 10, 12 years ago. And many of the regions have moved to electronic files as well, and municipalities. I don't have concrete answers for you in terms of the breadth of the costs. That would be part of the monies to determine. Our intention would be to try to chunk it down, because the only way to try to do it with the staff that we have is to do a certain number of employee groups a summer. So our intention probably would be to start with non-union files and then move to some of the smaller union groups, et cetera, each year. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions pertaining to that? No? Okay, so we can move on, I guess. Okay.
Looking at the budget goals, so for this upcoming year. So we have two main budget goals. We want to continue to build the operating capital reserves to 2% of the provincial allocation to maintain the board's low financial risk rating. This is it was 1%, the ministry has now changed it and bumped it up to 2%, so we're working towards abiding by the ministry's request. The other area is we want to find efficiencies in the budget to allow the critical new initiatives identified but not currently included in the May 16th draft. So we want to find a way in order to incorporate all these items into the draft without impacting the overall service of the board, or service to the board. So this is the proposal we've come up with to implement the initiatives and have minimal impact to the current service level. So the initiative, one of the initiatives was to direct $2 million to the capital reserve to complement the school renewal allocation. Well, how do we implement this without impacting service level? Well, we're going to reduce the facility management services operating budget by $2 million. The department will work diligently to identify efficiencies through 17-18 to address all the needs within the available budget while addressing system-wide capital investments. Certainly.
Through you, Madam Chair, I presume that the department is already doing that. So when you say reduce operating budget by $2 million,
Mm-hmm.
that says to me that we're just pushing services back until future budgets.
Not necessarily, Trustee Quinn. It's more of a taking a lot of the smaller projects and of small initiatives and putting them all together and putting them off to do it all at once. Roxana, do you want to keep going or?
On the right track. Absolutely. We have increased the budget for next year by, correct me, Giacomo, I think it's in excess of $2 million in anticipation of additional costs and additional requirements. Looking at the priorities within the department, there's some bigger ticket items that become capital. So the request from Superintendent Corbaccio is to move that into the capital reserve. The purpose for that reserve is to build it for certain capital projects that complement the school renewal, the small school renewal allocation that we receive. And perhaps Superintendent Corbaccio would like to discuss a little bit more. But we're not just cutting the budget. We are aligning it to where the needs are for next year. And if they are capital, it would flow through to the capital reserve and then come back into revenue as we spend the money on those priorities.
Through Madam Chair, they would be the typical projects: roof repairs, mechanical upgrades, asphalt repairs, roofing, and program enhancements where we can combine with what we're doing so we get a bigger bang for our buck. By getting small projects and consolidating them into one, we get more efficiencies, more cost effectiveness, there's less overhead, and only one contract as opposed to several contracts being put out. And we typically bring all those projects to the board for consideration as well. As you've seen our last months, we bring them forward, these are what we're considering, and provide you with an update of what projects we'd like to move forward with. And then, once the projects are done in the fall, we give you a reconciliation report of where we spent the money and what was accomplished and whether we're within budget.
Initiative, direct $85,000 towards the addition of an IT analyst position that will support the infrastructure and security of the network. Well, how are we going to implement this without impacting service level? Well, we're going to reduce the program enhancement requested by IT services by $108,000 by addressing some of the proposed upgrades during the current year and the remainder the following year. Initiative, continue to transfer approximately $700,000 to $800,000 into the operating reserve. This is to increase our allotment to the 1% or 2% that the ministry is requesting. How to impact?
Sorry to interrupt. Just on that note, recently the ministry officer has reached out to inform us that in the past, our risk assessment, they conduct a financial risk assessment of all the boards in the province, and in the past the guideline was a board should have a minimum of 1% of an operating reserve, 1% of the provincial allocation. And a few weeks ago, after we've passed the budget objectives of the 1%, they came back and said, well, we've looked at our criteria for our risk assessment, it's 2% going forward. So the guideline is to build up an operating reserve of 2%. Now, it's a guideline. You cannot build it overnight. It will be reflected in our budget objectives next year because we had already approved those objectives back in February. But what we're looking at, and if you hear us speak about the 2% all of a sudden, it's as a result of a changing guideline from the ministry.
Just on that, what would cause the ministry to make a change like that? What would be the background behind it?
It's hard to say. They're looking at all the boards, and what they're seeing is with the increasing in costs or the relative to the size of the board, for example, they probably felt that the 1%, if a number of emergencies or unpredicted expenses happen for a year, then it would be wiped out immediately. So they don't have enough for that board to continue to be compliant. And their comfort level has raised, and after reviewing their criteria for their risk assessment, it changed to a 2%. So that would be a low financial risk board, which we are we've been in the past too, so we are currently, and we would like to maintain that low ranking by working towards building that operating reserve. And it will come in to, one, it could fund one-time initiatives that are required for the system, and it would be there for anything that may happen that you're not expecting.
Okay. So we're looking at the transfer of $725,000 of the operating surplus into the operating reserve. But using the operating reserve to cover the one-time costs, and use the operating reserve to cover the one-time costs of the job evaluation officer, the record coordinator on the one-year contract, and the Simon Wiesenthal education tour, which would equal approximately $265,000. So the net transfer to the operating reserve for 2017 is estimated to be $460,000. So it would be $725,000 less the one-year initiatives of $265,000. So the initiative, expanding the Empower Reading program to all schools. So how do we impact or implement this without impacting service level? Well, we're going to allocate funding from the Family of Schools Superintendent School Contingency Budget and Curriculum Services to fund the training for the Empower Reading program in 2016 and 2017. So essentially it becomes a revenue neutral. So here's the list now, a revised list of those same initiatives we looked at before that totaled $750,000 has now been brought down to $590,000. And how that occurred was the $135,000 formerly for the Empower Reading program is now being funded through savings within the board in current year and into next year, as well as we have an expected contribution as Tony mentioned earlier, for the Simon Wiesenthal contribution of a roughly $25,000. And again, that's an estimate that we have, that we put in. So, our revised financial position incorporating all the new initiatives. Now, if you look at the very top, now I know this is a lot of numbers here, but I'll just point to the pertinent ones. So we talked about before the $942,000, which was our in-year surplus. At the very top, right in the middle of the middle column there, you can see less our new cost initiatives of $590,000, and then the amount that we transferred to our operating reserve of $460,000, less what we transfer to our capital reserve of $2 million, plus the reduction in facility services budget, as well as the reduction in the IT services budget. So the net impact is zero. If you look on the bottom section of that, you can see that our operating reserve is increasing from $3.3 million to roughly $3.756 million, as well as our capital reserve is increasing by the $2 million. So the $2 million we have for the capital is still there. It's just being put into a reserve account.
Thank you. Going back to the payment for the Empower Reading program, taking money out of a contingency fund and using it for new purchasing, new costs. What was the discussion around the senior management table regarding getting rid of a contingency fund? And when I look at the numbers for the cost of the Empower Reading and the new senior staffer at $130,000, I would prefer, as a trustee, to take that $130,000, which you found money for staffing, and put that into the Empower Reading program, into the classrooms for the special ed program, and not be hiring new senior staff for our board at this time. That's my point. I'd like the trustees to be aware of. So my question was,
I'm sorry, I would like to, if you don't mind clarifying, I don't think I follow. Which
So the Empower Reading program, you're taking that money out of a contingency fund to pay for that.
The school contingency fund, which gets allocated to schools on a need basis.
But the contingency disappears once you put it in towards the Empower, right? there's no longer a contingency if you're spending it.
There is, at this point, there's some available funding that hasn't had a need to be allocated to the schools, and the plan is to use whatever's left and not allocate it to the schools this year, and the same thing next year to cover the training, as well as anything that within curriculum, if there's any efficiencies that could be realized this year and next year, and fund that, assist the schools to fund the training for the Empower Reading program. Superintendent Brown.
But alternatively, we could take the money that you found for the new staff senior hire and put that towards the Empower program. It's about the same amount of money.
Superintendent Brown?
Just to clarify for Trustee Quinn, the costs for Empower are their one-time costs, so we're looking at purchasing materials that remain at the school, so they're there year after year. So once we make the initial investment, that's a one-time investment, and the other, so it's a half and half investment. One is in the program materials, the other is in the training of staff. So the ongoing running of the program is the updating of perhaps new staff. Somebody leaves and that sort of thing. It's in the big picture, it's minimal on a year-to-year basis once we make the investment. So the money the suggestion was with the use of the contingency funds, because it wouldn't roll over anyway. It was the use of a one-time fund to pay for a one-time expenditure, as opposed to an ongoing staffing thing, which is year after year. So any investment made in Empower is pretty much next year, and then upkeep costs are mostly around making sure staff are updated with training, but it's minimal on an ongoing basis.
Trustee Carabella, then Trustee Rowe.
Okay, well, I guess I was just wondering, like, when we vote for the whole thing, or could we vote, is it up for voting that we decide where we would, if we agree with some of these things? I guess, too, I was just to follow up with the assessment. I could see money being spent, again, to lower that waiting period for psychological assessment, which is really key, I think, for parents even to wait 8 months is very stressful. So just wondering, like, how we go about voting this. Do we just have one vote on the whole budget, or are we voting, can we vote line by line?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The process for, the board approves the budget as a whole, so that the approval and the vote is on the June 20th meeting. At this point in time, we don't have to go through all of we don't have to approve all of these. It's a discussion, so it's trustees' recommendations that we'll build in the next draft, and then we have one more look at it, and then there's more recommendations you may have. We build it into the final draft. So the vote itself would be at the end of the process, and it will incorporate all the changes that trustees suggest throughout. That some of these may or may not end up in the budget. Some may be deferred to next year. At this point, this is a proposal, and then we come back at the next meeting with a revised budget that incorporates the suggestions we hear today, that will incorporate the additional transportation costs, for example, from the motion approved earlier. That's not in the budget, so that will have to be added in the transportation budget, and so forth. So, and we keep track. So here's the changes from the first draft to the second draft. These are the changes, and here's where we stand, and we have one more go at it again before the June 20th meeting, when the trustees will approve the final budget.
Thank you. Trustee Rowe and then Trustee Quinn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted clarification, the difference between the sinking fund and the different reserves. Sounds like the same thing.
The committed capital projects are it's an accounting treatment, because we have the tangible capital assets now as assets that are depreciable, and depreciation or amortization of the tangible capital assets is not a cash expense, and there's no direct funding for all of it. So once the treatment changed, we have a huge deferred revenue that sits there on our balance sheet that comes into revenue to offset the portion of the amortization expense that's covered by that funding source. So if we build a school, say we build a school for $30 million, but ministry funding for that would have been 25, and then we would have used our own funding from a capital reserve for the additional 5, we have to commit it here. So it would have moved from a capital reserve up above into this committed capital project, and then you cannot touch it. It comes into revenue as it shows there, $273,000. It's a negative, but what that means is it comes into revenue this in next year to cover for the portion of amortization of those assets that have been funded as such. And this relates to, it really predates me, and it predates Superintendent McMahon before me. Actually, it was, the ministry allowed school boards to use their school renewal allocation towards expansion or building additional space within schools. And then once they put the tangible capital assets on the books, they decided to change the rules. And now all of a sudden they deemed that funding to be unsupported. Well, you already flowed the money to us and we already built it, and now it's unsupported, which means we have to commit it so that it has a funding source for that non-cash expense on our statements. That's all it is. And then the sinking fund interest earned when we retired, there were assets in the past, and when they were retired, the ministry deemed that there was interest earned in a certain amount, and it has to be depreciated over time. So it's been parked here. It's sort of like earned revenue that now comes in over time until it depletes. So we have no say in those items. They're committed and they come into revenue over time until they're depleted to zero. Really what we have a say is the items above that.
Okay, so just confirming then, so these line items will just disappear over time?
Yeah.
Yes.
Trustee Quinn?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, perhaps to address Trustee Carabella's question, we as trustees could put motions forward and vote on them as to give direction to the budget team. So if something in these new initiatives were not to your liking, you could, for example, say, I see in the new initiatives, HR spending they're asking for $290,000. We could say as a board, we'd like to limit HR spending to $200,000 in this budget cycle, and we would vote on that, and that would be something that the senior staff would have to bring back to us. Or we could say we want to freeze hiring for 2017-18 on senior staff positions, and then we could vote on that, and then that would be something that bring us back. So we can go individually through these, or we can go as a group or as a whole, but if you see something, then you should make a motion and we can discuss it, and staff will report back to us that way.
Okay, we're ready to move on? All right. Aaron, please.
Okay. So that completes the financial position as a result of the changes that we were suggesting in the previous slides. If there's no other questions, we'll move forward then. Roxana, do you want to go through these next ones then?
Yes. So at the trustees' request, we have put together a list of central staffing and departmental budgets, the operating budgets, just to take a look at where we are and also looking about 10 years back. So where were we 10 years and where are we today? So looking at, if you look at our organizational charts on the board website, who is there, where are they, what sort of positions are they in, and this chart summarizes that. And you'll see the progression for the year as we've expanded. Our enrollment in 10 years has increased by 25% and a bit. We have been expanding overall. There's a number of positions that are listed here that have different funding sources, and I believe if we go one more slide, Aaron. So this is just listing. Over time, the ministry has been providing either funding or requested that we have certain positions in place. And they have a funding source, whether it's through the GSN and it's enveloped, whether it's through an education program, other provincial grants, whether there might be some federal grants that request that we have certain positions. So some of them are they're listed here, all that we could think of at this point, that would be captured within the additional staffing. So if we do look in terms of statistics and where we are, so take away some of these positions, and then we're looking at the growth in staff to be just over 16%, whereas the enrollment is 25%, and overall our staffing has increased proportionately with that, because with growth comes additional student-facing staff. I'm not sure if you have questions on the staffing pieces, and if you look across, a lot of the areas stay the same, and some of the areas that have grown with growth. So particularly looking at facilities and the need to manage more facilities, and meaning schools and square footage, and building of schools as we're growing. Human resources is directly linked to enrollment growth and staffing. As our enrollment increases and staffing increases overall, there's an increasing need for recruitment staff in that department. And it also lists central support staff, central professionals and paraprofessionals, our consultants and coordinators that we have positioned centrally that support our schools. And it has been a strategy that our board has employed to support our schools through consultants, coordinators, through our itinerant teachers, which has worked, because our graduation rates continue to be higher and higher. Our EQAO results are well. So it's a proven strategy, and one that we strongly recommend continuing as well. Which one is up? The departmental costs paints a different, it's a similar picture, but it's a little bit more shocking. So I was asked, I think Trustee Quinn has asked, why do we only have about $250,000 in identified savings from one year to the other? Well, it's because we're already running as efficiently as we can, and our budget, if you look at the departmental budgets, for example, where they were in 2008 and where they are today, with the exception mostly of schools, the facility management, school operations, they're actually decreased. So we do more with less. We have expanded. We have made use of every avenue for cooperative and collaborative spending. As you can take a look at, for every year, we diligently look through the budget and we identify opportunities to save money and incorporate it into the next year's budget and so forth. It's hard to say upfront what they are. It's hard for me to say we're going to find this much more money in the future. It's been over time done so diligently as we identified opportunities. And if you're looking over, most of those budgets have been actually going down. Now, the school operating budgets, the years that have been completed up to 15, 16, they include EPOs, which the current years would not. So it's not apple-to-apple comparison. But if we were to look at the apple-to-apple, we actually increased school budgets from 16-17 to 17-18 by over $200,000. So that's outside of the EPOs. And then whatever gets allocated through EPOs, and any of the rollovers are not in there from one year. They get to keep. If they have any funding left over in their budget, schools roll it over into the next year. Those are not reflected into the current budget. We don't know what they're going to be at this point.
Question? Trustee Quinn and Trustee Danko.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, and thank you for bringing this to us. But looking at decreasing in percentage of spending seems a little disingenuous, because I presume that, for example, curriculum services, while they have gone down, things that were once under curriculum services budget may have moved to special education services over that 10-year period. And where monies were allocated according to budget, departmental budgets, could have moved around. So to tell us that you've spent less on curriculum services as a percentage, I would think that is impossible with the growth in the board, and that you've actually moved it around through different departments. And for the director's office budget to go down so dramatically as well, I think that whatever was once in the director's budget is now being allocated somewhere else, if we're still providing the same services to more students.
The way they are tracked, you're looking at the same accounts, so they're tracked consistently. If they had moved, we would have moved the expense to the same area. So curriculum's budget and special education budget have always been distinct. They're not overlapping. And what did change, so director's office, for example, we did have additional 21st century funding and code funding, and a lot of the areas that could have otherwise been needed under or budgeted in that area we were able to use under these funding sources. So that's one example there. Other than that, it's mostly we're looking at every time we would renew a service provider, we would renew contracts to try to get more out of it and more of an economies of scale, using what grouping with other school boards and trying to do that. So we have different purchasing consortia that we're part of, and that has over time realized quite a few savings. So yes, to your question, some level of service may be different over time. We may have provided something that we don't currently, but we are meeting the needs of our system, which is 25% larger than it was 10 years ago with less. Whatever the needs are today, they are being met.
Trustee Danko?
Madam Chair, where can we pencil in the bus we just voted for Holy Family earlier this evening?
It would be added to the transportation budget. That's not part of this. So the transportation budget was already presented to the Board of Directors for HSTS and approved. It doesn't contain this information. It's new and they have not considered it. We'll have to go back to them and it will be added. It will reflect it in the transportation allocation, which isn't part of this because it's not a central budget per se. The cost is what the consortium deems it to be. So we don't develop that budget. We do review it, we ask questions, do our due diligence, but at the end of the day, the details are with HSTS.
I just would like to get some clarification. So first off, the population of the board has gone up 18% since 2008. The other thing I wanted to ask though is in regards to school services, the difference between school services and looking at schools under facility management. Could you just provide a better description of what's included in there? Sorry, under facility management services, schools, just the facilities themselves, and under school services, what would that encompass in fully?
So this is the departmental. So this is the non-salary portion of the school allocation on the budget within Giacomo's area. And if I look at the board report, there's actually a breakdown. A6, page 50 of your package. It outlines the total budget for the school operations, and it includes salaries and benefits at the top, so 10 million, and then outside of that is this 22 million. So it includes all the utilities and the hydro, any repairs, furniture, equipment that might be purchased, school maintenance supplies, contractual services, security, fire, portable moves, so everything that is related with operating the schools, everything.
So, and I do think it's really impressive that business services, curriculum services, the director's office, administration of the school is down so significantly. The population of the board went up 17, but also astonishingly, from 2008, the budget of the board was $258 million. If you go back to the budgets of the day online, today we're at $400 million. And our population growth has been 17.85%. So the money has come into this board. Most of it has gone to salaries and to teachers and people in the classroom, which is just fantastic. But we are certainly doing more with less in those areas that you identified, but education has been spent a lot of money over the last 10 years, a lot, from $285 million to $400 million at this board alone, by 17.85%.
We're almost done. One more slide. So it's just the timeline update. So you can see here that we're just right in the middle, the May 16th. Our next one will be the June 6th meeting, which will be a draft. And then our final presentation relating to the 17-18 budget will be June 20th board meeting. And that is it. Any questions?
Sorry, just one, Madam Chair. If I may, one point. So there's certain changes that will also be impacting next draft. We're finalizing the enrollment. It may change as we're looking at the registrations that we do have. So we try to take another snapshot at the end of May and then early in June as well to see where we are. And that may change our enrollments, which triggers more staffing in the school in growth. We are also looking at all the enveloping and doing one more review of everything, making sure we have everything. In case the ministry announces anything, any changes, they will be incorporated as well. So just something to keep in mind. We'll incorporate the transportation cost in there and then bring forth another draft for the next meeting.
Items. 10.1, appointment of student trustees. Superintendent McGillicuddy.
Through you, Madam Chair, presented for information is the appointment of student trustees for 2017-2018. The election of student trustees took place at St. Ignatius of Loyola on Tuesday, April 25th. After each candidate had an opportunity to speak and answer questions, student senators from our 9 secondary schools elected your new slate of student trustees. Representing Oakville will be Anna Maria Barble, a grade 11 student at Holy Trinity. Representing Burlington and returning for a second term will be Ingrid Schwecht, a grade 11 student at Assumption. Representing North Halton and returning for a second term will be Christina Atrak, a grade 11 student at Christ the King. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, and we congratulate our 3 student trustees, and we welcome Anna Maria. It's been a joy having you. Manuela, it's very difficult to say goodbye to you, but I know you're going on to greater things, but you will be back, right? You'll be back. Okay, so congratulations to all our student trustees. And then we are going to Manuela at 10.2 for student trustee update.
Okay, so it's been a long meeting, so I'll try to keep it brief. The student trustees, including Anna Maria, we will take part in our Osta ACO AGM conference, which is taking part on the weekend of May 25th to the 28th in the Renaissance downtown. We have our last Senate meeting for this year on May 23rd, which is actually at Thomas Merton, which we're really excited to have there because it's the first ever Senate meeting at that location. The incoming student trustees will be selecting the new Senate for next year, which is, Ingrid stated earlier in the meeting that it's something new we felt that would be beneficial for both the Senate and trustees to pick the Senate earlier in the year rather than in October. Their first meeting will be a whole day event on June 6th. And earlier today, the International Student Exit Survey was sent out to all senators, so hopefully we'll get the responses back from the international students, kind of seeing their opinions on how their year or semester went, so we can improve that for the handful of students we're going to get next year. So tonight I'm going to be taking the pillar of achieving. With spring and the end of the year quickly approaching, spring sports are kicking off playoffs this week. And STA, the theater program, so Theatre Aquinas, actually participated in the Sears Drama Festival of Ontario and won an award, which that festival is kind of just regional representatives, and they do a play and stuff. Students across the board are preparing to accept universities and upcoming culminating.
Under the Pillar of Believing, during Catholic Education Week, all the schools on the board participated in a board-wide school mass, and they also held various initiatives within their schools to kind of celebrate our education and showcase what Catholic education is all about. John Vanier held the annual Walk with Jesus, which many secondary and elementary students participated in, and chaplains across the board are holding kind of meditations. I know at my school you can go into the chapel and kind of have over lunch and just reflect and meditate if right now it's kind of stressful for students, especially in secondary schools, as Manuela mentioned, with culminatings and university or college acceptances coming up.
And just under the pillar of belonging, so now that we're approaching the end of the school year, we've seen a lot of our new mentors and senators and ambassadors kind of reach out to the grade 9 students of next year and have events with them, and sort of even including the grade 9 students of this year to sort of help them transition into high school better. Another thing we've seen is that during Catholic Education Week, a lot of schools held spirit events, like I know Assumption held a Jersey Day and a Tourist Day and a Pajama Day, and they're just a lot of schools are raising money, especially for now that spring has kind of come in. I know Corpus Christi held an annual spring clothing drive, and Notre Dame collected 80 boxes of food for the Burlington Food Bank for their May Giving campaign. As well, a lot of schools attended the March for Life in Ottawa, and it was really nice to see pictures from that. I know a lot of students came back with nothing but positive words to say about the event. As well as Team Unbreakable from across all the high schools participated in a youth mental health run in Spencer Smith Park. And Assumption is holding their very first ever bail or jail event, which students have the opportunity to purchase tickets, and each ticket is equivalent to 2 minutes of jail time for their teacher, their 5th period teacher, with the ultimate opportunity to jail their teacher for the duration of the 5th period and kind of get out of class. And this is a way to raise funds for the purchasing of a school mascot. Sure, you know what? More the merrier.
Thank you very much, student trustees. I appreciate your work. Any questions for the student trustees? Okay, thank you. And we have time. So we have 10 o'clock. So can I have, please, a motion to go past 10 o'clock? Trustee Quinn, Trustee Danko, all in favor? Thank you. To 10.3, school educational field trips. Superintendent Na.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The trips that are still taking place this year are before you. If you have any questions, happy to answer, or one of the superintendents.
Any questions pertaining to those trips? Nope. Okay, thank you. Solutions Summit 2017, Executive Officer O'Hara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have with me in the gallery Katie Ongaro and Laura Fries, who are both HR staff, who are 2 of the 3 individuals that attended the Solutions Summit on April the 3rd through April the 5th, 2017. A way of background to this, SmartFind Express is our automated absence reporting system, which we use to record and maintain employee absences, as well as to assign replacement staff to fill short-term vacancies for teachers, educational assistants, and early childhood educators. There is an annual conference that takes place to which school boards who use this product attend, and it gives an opportunity for school board administrators to discuss development priorities, concerns, preview the new products, and to improve their technical skills and review processes and best practices. In addition, recently Smart Fine Express was acquired by a new company called People and Min, and certainly attending the conference allowed our staff to hear from the new leadership and their vision and the changes that are coming. And certainly what we did learn is that there is a significant rewrite to the Smart Fine Express program which is coming. It's going to look different. It's going to require us to provide some additional training to staff, but it's also modernized. It's going to be able to be a much more modernized tool and more user-friendly for both our administrators and our employees. So I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have with the assistance of my staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on the Solution Summit? No? Okay. Thank you, and thank you to the ladies for sitting here enjoying our company for 2 hours. Thank you. The student trustees, if you feel that you need to go back to your books, we understand. I can see that you've got some pressing issues coming up, so certainly if you wish to be excused, you are so excused. 10.5, the International Student Program, ICF, North America Workshop, Superintendent Pinelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my pleasure this evening to update the board on the last fair that I attended. As you heard earlier this evening from the budget report, it's very positive. Our international recruitment continues to be positive in terms of attracting more international students to Halton Catholic. So, in fact, I did attend the International Conference for Educational Fair that was held on April 23rd to 26th in Vancouver, where a total of over 845 participant agents and institutions were there to engage in the conversation of recruiting international students. During the 3 days that I attended, I was fortunate enough to make very positive contact because this is part of our strategy in Halton Catholic to diversify the market and the students that we are bringing to Halton Catholic. So I did meet with agencies from Mexico, Spain, Panama, Venezuela, Colombia, Brazil, Germany, Sweden, Ecuador, the Slavic Republic, and Finland. They're very excited about having partnerships with our board. Without a doubt, as I continue to attend the various fairs and conferences, it is apparent that we know an outstanding school system that they're interested in attending. We definitely do need to continue as I engage in the various and attend the seminars that we do need to diversify our market. We should not be putting all our effort in one. One of the message that I continuously hear is that these markets will require more energy. In other words, they want more attendance, more interaction and communication in order to attract the European market, to attract the South American market to our board. Having said that, it was a privilege, as always, to be present and to represent the board. I'd be open to any questions.
Thank you, Superintendent Pinelli. Any questions? Trustee Quinn?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I really do commend the board and senior staff in pursuing ways that we can increase incoming funds to the board through international students, and it's great to have people from all over the world coming to our board. It's great for the students. But I was looking at this slide that was presented to us in our enrollment in elementary and secondary, and looking at the drop-off from elementary to secondary, I think this should be an ongoing focus for retaining students and not giving up on international students. But this is glaring to me that we have such a drop-off, but we're going to Europe and South America to find students when here in Halton we have that kind of number.
Thank you. Superintendent Nagoy is going to speak to that.
If I may just address that, it is a great observation Trustee Quinn has, and perhaps Superintendent McGillicuddy can add. The drop-off and it's not the retention, but sometimes you have big grades. So you have a big grade 8 that moved into grade 9. Now it's looking as if grade 9s have increased significantly, and then you have very small JKs starting into the system. So that overall impacts your enrollment, elementary enrollment. It's not necessarily that you're not growing as much or increasing as much or retaining as much, but you have to also look at the grade progression.
Sorry, okay, then maybe I misunderstand, but looking at this chart, in elementary in 2011, there were 17,500 students, and in secondary there were 10,000. So there's, so if I'm reading this wrong,
if I may, through you, Madam Chair.
Superintendent Camilli? Camillo?
We can combine. We can do it together. The chart can be misleading. Absolutely. It's reflective that the elementary grade it captures 10 years, and secondary now only captures 4. So normally it should be more than double the secondary enrollment. In fact, we more than capture our grade 8s. We oftentimes, almost every year since I've been with the board, we will draw from other school districts, our coterminous board, our private schools. So we actually have no challenge in retaining our students. We actually are very proud of the fact that we grab more than our grade 8s. So I can understand, though, how that could be
misleading. Thank you for the clarification.
But there is some retention problems in some of our schools where the grade 8s go to the local coterminous board.
There are certain schools that have a strong historical background in attending certain schools, and sometimes that's very difficult to change. Yeah, and it continuously.
Just supplementary, on balance, as a system, we take more students from the public system in great numbers than they take from ours. So we have individual schools by virtue either of proximity or of historical relationships where, for instance, the public school may have been there before Catholic education was even in the community, and parents went there, and then their children sometimes also go there to the public system. But by virtue of the total numbers, we vastly take more of public and private school elementary students than go in the other direction.
I might also add that one of the greatest retention triumphs in the history of this board was the reconstruction of St. Thomas Aquinas Secondary School to bring students from East Oakville into our system.
Yes, High Price School. There are only about 4 schools in the board where they do have that historical background, but yes, it exists. Okay, thank you to everyone who commented. Now we are on 10.6, Extensive Trip Advisory Committee. Superintendent Cipriano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I present this information report regarding the Extensive Trip Advisory Committee's approval of the 4 trips that you have as attached appendices. These trips will take place during the 2017-2018 school year. Just a reminder how these trips differ from the regular overnight trips that you receive as information on a monthly basis. An ETAC trip, Extensive Trip Advisory Committee trip. The definition is that any trip in any of our schools that requires either of the following, either air transportation or more than 5 nights accommodation, it qualifies as ETAC, and then it has to follow our procedure for ETAC, which includes a committee made up of superintendents and principals from our secondary schools to review the safety, the itinerary, and the curriculum connections for these trips to be approved. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions? Trustee Ian Tomasi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, just a quick question on the trip to New York City. Are we comfortable, given some of the things that have been going on in the U.S., that all our students will be able to get across the border and then be okay coming back?
Through you, Madam Chair, we have made provisions with our trip providers, recognizing that I believe at a previous board meeting, there were comments made by you, the trustees, about concerns for our students who may or may not be denied or allowed entry into the U.S. So we've made provisions with our trip providers that any child, any of our students that take part in these trips, should they be denied for whatever reason, whether it be a natural passport reason or a change in a policy at a country, those students would be supervised at all times and supervised back to their home without impacting the other students on the trip. But they would always be supervised. There would always be their safety would be. That has been planned for from all of our trip providers.
Point 7, 2017, 2018, budget consultation process, summary feedback. Andrea. Oh, Paula, sorry, I didn't see your name there.
I'll start it off, and then Andrea can jump in here. We thought we'd provide both visual and text form to trustees on the consultations that we did for the budget. The first one was the telephone town hall, online survey, and then an email. Trustees can see that over 5,800 parents accepted the call when we called out that evening, and a total of 579 left remarks on their poll. There was also time set aside, as you know, on the telephone town hall, almost 30 minutes for parents to ask questions, and there were 18 questions submitted by parents, and we've provided that in Appendix B. The online survey, the total respondents were 1,438, and some have submitted an open-ended question. That's in Appendix E. So all of the appendix that have questions that were asked either by voicemail or by email, we're going to be posting online so that parents can go there and see that someone responded to their question. And the people who left a phone message, we're going to send that out to and say to them, go to the website to see the answer, because we're not going to call them all back. But we hope to put all their answers online. And then any feedback that we received, it's also included in your package, all the comments. So I'm happy to take any questions, Madam Chair, and I'm sure Andrea is too.
Any highlights or trends or themes emerging?
Themes.
That is a bit of a loaded question. I think the very first theme was around trustee and staff salaries. That was probably the most common theme that emerged. After that, it would be around paperless, parents wanting us to go paperless for the most part. All the themes are listed. They're provided in the online survey results. The other thing I wanted to add that the director didn't mention was that this whole report has been posted online. It's accessible from the landing page of our website, and it redirects to our budget consultation page, which is under financial reports. The audio recording of the telephone town hall has also been posted, so for anybody who was not able to participate, they can hear how it went. They can hear the questions and the responses. And as the director mentioned, we will be, we actually are, when the parents, we had 18 voicemail messages, so when they did provide contact information, and they did not always do so, but when they did, we will be calling them back, the appropriate staff member will be calling them back, and we will also be providing a written response online so that everyone can see what the responses were. And I think that covers it all, unless you have any questions.
Any questions? Trustee Caravella.
And what was the time frame when they'll be answered? I missed it.
Oh, no, you didn't miss it. I didn't mention it. We're trying to get the 8 responses back, so they've been sent out. I'm thinking it may take about a week to 2 weeks to get it posted.
Thank you very much. That was a lot of work doing that survey, so thank you very much for doing that. Moving on, we are down to miscellaneous information. The minutes of the latest policy committee, the minutes of the April CPIC committee, if there are no comments to that, and I don't think we have any correspondence. Do we have any questions? No questions. So we're going to go back into in-camera. So the public section of this meeting is now concluded, and trustees will be going into in-camera for a short period of time. So we thank everyone for coming out tonight. I can't do it because in-camera has to be. Can I have a motion, please, to move in camera? Vice Chair Trites, seconded by Trustee Danko. All in favour? Thank you.